Well, hello, amazing parents, and welcome to another exciting episode of Graceful Parenting. I'm Amy Hayes, your host and guide, and the author of the recently published book, Graceful Parenting. And on the program, we're going through the book chapter by chapter, and this week we are on chapter 11, so we're getting close to the end of the book. There's 2 more chapters after this. So if this is the first time you're joining us, feel free to scan the QR code on the screen or go to the website to get your copy of the book and the workbook, or just follow along with the lessons. You can watch previous episodes through the on-demand feature of this network as long as they're available, which won't be forever, but I think they're all still, well, half of them are still up there, I think. But last week, I promised that in this show today that I would share with you the one thing that causes most of the conflicts with your children. And once you understand this, that what's causing the conflict, it makes it a lot easier to sort it out and to resolve the conflict. And I think you'll be surprised at how simple and obvious this is. But I know when I first discovered it, I thought, well, this is huge. Why have I never seen this before? But basically, most of the conflict you have with your child is simply a conflict of wills or desires. You want one thing, your child wants another. And you're probably thinking, well, that's obvious. Yes, but until you understand what's going on, it may seem like, well, that doesn't help me any, but it will. Just stick with me. So, for example, you want them to go to bed, they want to stay up. You want them to eat veggies, they want to eat candy. You want them to clean up, they want to keep playing. It's just they want one thing and you want another. So how do you resolve this? Well, when our children do not fulfill our desires, we call it disobedience. But yet we expect them to calmly accept our denial of their desires. And to me, I don't know, that's just a double standard. I'm just saying, that's what it looks like to me. And we're expecting things of our children that we don't expect of ourselves. We don't accept their demands and their desires, and yet we expect them to do that for us. So it's very confusing to a child because we're modeling to them how we want them to be. It's just like we tell them no all the time. And the first time they say no to us, we punish them, or we call it rebellion or defiance or disobedience. So we have to be careful about treating others the way we want to be treated. And that goes for our children too. We talked about this in an earlier lesson that a lot of times we exempt our children from basic Christian principles. And to me, that's the most basic Christian principle of the golden rule of treating others the way you want to be treated. But the thing about children is they're very simple beings. They're very much less complex than adults. They don't play the games that adults play. It might seem like it, but they don't really. We kind of teach them to by the way we respond to them. But they're simple. They don't moderate their thoughts, desires, or actions. They just live it out. It's all on their sleeve or in their actions. And so we always know what they're thinking, what they want, and what's bothering them. And in a sense, that should make it easy for us, but it's that constant stream of demands and desires and questions and complaints that doesn't seem like a healthy thing to us. But it's just because our children have not learned how to get their needs and desires met in socially acceptable ways. But we can't fault them for that. And so we need to be trained and learn how to train them to manage their desires in a healthy way. And the other thing is that children are the center of their universe. I'm talking about small children, 3 and under, but even up to 7. Children are the center of their universe, and for good reason. I think we have this kind of false humility in the Christian world about, thinking nothing of ourselves and just only thinking of others. But you cannot, until you care and love about yourself, until you understand and honor your own heart's desires, you can never care and love about someone else and honor their thoughts and desires. And the Bible tells us this. It says to love others the way you love yourself. Well, the truth is you will love others to the level that you love yourself. So those early formative years where your child's learning who he is, that he has value, and he also needs to learn that his desires have value. And we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. And I'm going to show you how to validate his desires without granting every wish. That's the key. So it's not because kids are sinful that they're self-centered. It's because that's the way God designed them to be, so that they can learn who they are, that they have value, that they have worth, and so that they can then turn around and do that for others when they get older. But we're expecting small children to act like adults, and that's just foolishness. They develop physically in a timeline. They also develop emotionally, mentally, in every way, spiritually, as on a timeline. And so we have to work along with that process instead of against it. Okay, so desire. Desire is not a bad thing. Desire, humans were made for desire fulfilled. If you think about it, Adam and Eve lived in a garden where they had every desire, everything they wanted. Everything they desired was theirs. They didn't have to want for anything. In fact, the name Eden means delight. And so they lived in this garden of delights, and like I said, that endless stream of desires that come out of your child's mouth might not seem like a good thing, but it's actually an indication that his heart is alive, because desire comes from our heart, and our heart is what we live from. And so without getting ahead of myself, we're going to look at why it's important then to honor those desires. Scripture even tells us that God gives us the desires of our heart. So there's two ways to look at that. He gives us the desire that we want, or he gives us the thing we desire. And I look at it both ways, because God is always the initiator, that he's the author and the finisher. So he gives us the desire for things, and then he fulfills those desires as well. And there's a reason for this. That's my personal interpretation of that. But there's a purpose in desire, a very important purpose. And one of the primary things that sets humans apart from other creatures is that we have desires. And that's because they have a very important purpose in our life. Animals act on instinct. They cannot have a desire, imagine, something to fulfill that desire, and then go get that desire fulfilled. They don't do that. Only human beings do that. And the reason is that human beings are the ones that rule and reign on the earth. We manage the planet. And desire is the fuel for everything that we do. For all human endeavor, all accomplishments, it comes from desire. So nothing was ever accomplished, nothing ever invented or produced without desire behind it. So you can look around you and see that everything that humans have ever created started with a desire in someone's heart. They probably had a thought or a desire and to make life better in some way, their life or the common good. And so they acted on that desire, and it fueled them to see it through. You think about Thomas Edison and how much determination it took for him to invent the light bulb. I think he failed, hundreds of times, but he had a desire. He had an idea, and he had a desire to see it come into reality, and that desire fueled him. I said in the last session that approval is the foundation for success in every area of our life, but it's desire that moves us forward. So approval is the foundation, and then a desire moves us forward and gives us that persistence to continue until we see it come to fruition. So if you don't have the desire to improve your life, life slowly falls apart. So let's look at desire in children. So I've already mentioned a few things about small children, but they haven't learned how to moderate or regulate their desires. They don't even know what desires are realistic or unrealistic. And small children don't know the difference between a need and a desire. So if they want something, to them, it's a need. So when you tell them they can't have what they want, it's like telling them you're not going to meet their needs. And that's a very scary thing for a child. And you think about it, a 2-year-old asks for a piece of candy in the store and you tell them no. To them, you're saying, I am not going to meet your needs. Well, and he throws a tantrum. Why? Because he's crying for help. No one is here to meet my needs. Is basically, it's the ultimate cry for help, a tantrum is. And so when we recognize that, and we can understand and we can empathize with our children and understand what they're going through, because as I said, they're not developed, their brains haven't developed, Their emotions haven't developed. Their understanding, they don't understand the way we do. And yet we're talking to them like they do and trying to explain to them logically why they can't have what they desire when their logical brain isn't even developed yet. And so it just creates all this confusion and fear, like, why isn't my caregiver caring for me? And that's what it feels like when we deny their desires. So they haven't learned how to get their desires fulfilled in socially acceptable ways. I already talked about that. So it makes it difficult for parents when you don't understand, what state your child is in. So what you can do is, just think about your own experience. If you want something, do you want someone to tell you can't have it? Doesn't it make you want it more? I mean, if you've ever gone on a diet and you can't even take your own, directives, like you can't have a cake, don't drink the soda, go out and exercise, and you don't want to, right? But you're telling yourself. And so it's very difficult to tell a child to behave in a way that contradicts his desires, because he's, like we've already said, a lot less mature than we are. But human beings are pretty much wired to resist whatever they're told they have to do, or to want what they're told they can't have. So, you think about teenagers. You tell them not to drink. The first thing they're going to want to do is sneak a drink. Okay, why does mom and dad want me to drink alcohol? Or smoke cigarettes, or do this or do that. It's human nature to want what we can't have. But here's a simple fix for when your children are wanting something they can't have. As I've already mentioned, a desire is something that comes from our heart. And when you learn to connect with your child's heart, we're going to talk more about that in the next lesson, but it is huge, because that's where you can really gain influence in your child's life. And this expression of desire is an open doorway into your child's heart. So think about when I'm going to give you a really practical example. You probably relate to this. You're watching TV with your spouse and you see a commercial for this exotic tropical vacation. And it is just beautiful resort with all the amenities. You've got white sand beaches and clear blue water, and, just people waiting on you hand and foot, delicious food, island music playing in the background. And it's like heaven on earth. And you see this commercial and that you can't either afford this vacation, whether it be money or time or whatever, or too many kids, you can't leave, too many responsibilities, it. But you look at it and you wish you could. It's a desire. And you say something, just in a dreamy state to your spouse. Oh, wouldn't that be awesome to go there for just 2 weeks, just me and you? Well, your spouse, if they're a half decent spouse of any kind, they're not going to scold you for that. They're not going to say, well, you can't have that. We can't do that. We can't afford that. We can't leave the kids. They're not going to say that. They're going to go, yeah, it'd be awesome, wouldn't it? And all they're doing is acknowledging your desire. They're honoring it. They're saying it's valid. They're validating it. And they're empathizing. They're feeling it with you, saying, yeah, I agree. That would be awesome. And you both know that you're not going on this vacation, at least anytime soon. You're just expressing a desire, a dream, something you wish for. So we can apply the same thing to your child. And children's desires are pretty simple things. And sometimes they're complicated. As they get a little bit older, they want to go to Disney World or things like that. Excuse me, just a minute. Had a little tickle in my throat. But you can do the same thing. And everybody just wants to be heard and understood. And your child's no different. So when your child expresses a desire, whether it's to stay up late or go to the park or have candy when it's not time to have candy, or whatever it is, we have this fear that if we recognize and validate the desire, that it will escalate the desire. but the opposite is actually true. So what we need to do is just recognize the desire, just acknowledge it. Oh, you want to go to the park? Mom, can we go to the park? Oh, wow, yeah. And then you want to listen and acknowledge that it's valid. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go to the park. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stay up late. There's nothing wrong with wanting to play. There's nothing wrong with the things most of our kids want. It just goes against what we want. Like I said before, it's a conflict of wills. We're trying to run a household. We're trying to take care of them. And there's nothing wrong with that either, but your child doesn't understand that. All he understands is that his desire is different than yours. So once you kind of you understand, first of all, that your children are not acting in defiance. They're just acting out of the stage of development they're in. They don't have the understanding that you have. They don't have the ability to manage their desires and emotions the way you do. Then it makes you kind of become less offendable, right? Because we think that our kids are just somehow making it difficult for us on purpose, like they just won't cooperate, and that's not it at all. They're not doing those things consciously. Remember, small children they're on autopilot. They're acting out of just reacting to their environment, their desires, comfort, and curiosity, and those sort of things. They're not thinking and making decisions. So first of all, just to acknowledge that they have a desire that's different than yours. Oh, you want to go to the park today? I've got a lot of work to do. You know what, honey? And then you validate it. Yeah, that sounds like fun. I like the park too. And you want to be sincere about it. That sounds like fun. Maybe it's not fun for you, but you recognize it's fun for them. And then you empathize and you say, today I'm pretty busy, but tomorrow or whenever, Saturday, let's plan to go to the park then. So you are not denying that desire, but you're also not granting it, at least right now. You are responding in a way that recognizes that they have a desire that's valid. You're validating it. You're empathizing with it. You're showing them that you understand. And what happens is they see you as being on their side instead of the enemy that won't give them anything they want. It's the same thing if they want to stay up late. Oh, I know you want to stay up. I like to stay up late sometimes too. I know. And the caution is that don't say but we have to. Okay, because that negates, when you say but, it negates anything you just said. That goes across the board for anyone, anytime. But you say, oh, I know, staying up late is fun. Yeah, I like to do that sometimes too. Maybe we'll stay up late on. So you're letting them know. You don't even have to say maybe we'll stay up late, tomorrow or on the weekend. You can just say, I know, it's fun to stay up late, isn't it? Because what happens is you're not giving them anything to argue with. You're recognizing that their desire is valid. Yeah, I get it. You like to stay up late. I know. And so you just want to be careful not to say anything that comes against what they're desiring. And you're showing that you have empathy. And like I said, we're often afraid to acknowledge our children's desires because we think that then that will escalate. And they're like, okay, mom's going to give it to me. But what happens is when your child is heard and he's understood, he feels safe. His heart feels safe because, the Bible tells us to guard our heart. Well, we're going to talk about that next week. But a large part of our heart is our desire. It's what comes out of us that makes us, what we're interested in, what we like, what we want to do. All of our desire, that's us. And so when you honor that in your child, it's a huge, huge factor in guarding their heart. And they feel like you're on their side, that their heart is safe with you. And so they can leave it with you. Mom knows I want to do that. I know that she will. He's not thinking this consciously or cognitively, but it's just this sense in his heart that he's got someone that's on his side, that's going to make sure that he gets those things that he needs. And like we said, desire is the same thing as a need to a small child. So you don't have to grant the wish. Once you do these steps, your child gets what he needs. He needs to be heard. He needs to be understood. And we all need that. Just like the example I shared about the vacation. Your spouse doesn't scold you. He doesn't tell you you can't have it. He knows you already know that. Your child already knows he has to go to bed when you tell him. And so you just empathize. It's almost like the Bible says to rejoice with those who rejoice and bear one another's burdens. We just come alongside so that our children are not walking alone. We all need that. We all need someone who hears us and understands us at all ages of our life. All through life, we need that. So doing that for your child, it gives him that foundation of security, and it makes him feel safe and protected instead of abandoned and alone, which is how they feel when we continually deny their desires. So let's talk about this. What happens when desires are denied? Well, if nothing moves forward in life without desire, then denying desire suppresses the drive to achieve. So that desire to make life better, to have things that we desire, it's the seed of what's going to fuel your child's potential and purpose in the future. So again, I'm not saying you should give your child everything they ask for. You don't need to. But if their desire is continually squelched, it will squelch that fuel for accomplishment in their life. And when we lose the desire to live, I mean, some people even lose the desire to live. And you see that. Their life just slowly slips away and falls apart. They're empty shells just waiting to die. Well, we don't want to start that in childhood. We want our children we want to nurture that desire in a healthy way, so that fire that becomes the passion that drives their life doesn't get quenched, because passion is just strong desire, and passion is what drives us towards our potential, our goals, our purpose. And when we constantly deny our children's desires, they learn that others determine what they can have and what they can do. And so then they become relegated to this life that lacks desire, which is devoid of heart, and it becomes a mechanical existence, a life of survival. And you see adults now that have no motivation to follow their dreams. Why? Even though they have dreams and they would like to see them fulfilled. Well, I think it's because all their life they're told they couldn't. You can't have what you desire. And so, we're constantly telling our kids to do what makes sense instead of to follow the desire that's in their heart. We want people to live from logic. Well, that never produces anything of greatness. Everything that God created you to do comes from your heart, not from logic. And God often works in illogical ways, if not always. But, a lot of us are waiting around for permission, for someone to tell us we can follow our dreams, follow our heart, pursue our passion, and do what God's created them to do. And that's why I said, when I first discovered this about desire, I was like, this is huge. And I don't know anyone who's talking about this. My story is a perfect example of what happens when desire is quenched. When I was a child, I grew up in a family of 10 children on one salary. And my dad was a teacher, so it wasn't a huge salary. And so we learned very early on that we had what we needed, and that was about it. Now, my parents were great. They gave us things like private school and private music lessons, but those were things they wanted, not things we wanted. And they always gave us Christmas and birthday presents, and I don't know how they did it, to be honest, but they did. But beyond that, on the day-to-day, we didn't have all the latest, greatest toys and games and all those things that all the other kids had. And I would look at my friends and I would think, in order to kind of soothe myself, because I just knew we didn't even have to be told. We just knew we couldn't have all those things. And I would just look at them. And this is how I kind of reconciled the situation in my little child brain. I thought to myself, well, I don't need those things. Those are just unnecessary things. And so I kind of, I took on this kind of better than you attitude, that I was better than them because I didn't need those things. And they were weak because they needed all the latest, greatest toys. But I loved to go to my best friend's house and play all the games to play with. She had all the Barbies and everything like that. We didn't have any of that stuff. And so there's some truth to that. You don't need all those things, but I'm just giving a practical, tangible lesson or example about what the point I'm trying to make here is that your desire to be everything, and God created us for abundant life. There's nothing wrong with having abundant possessions as long as they don't possess you. But abundance in every way, like becoming everything God made you to be. We learn to live small in the natural, and it makes us live small in every way. So the things we experience as a child become the template that we apply to every part of our life. And so we don't expect much. We don't expect much from relationships. We don't expect much from God. We don't expect much from ourselves when we learn to live with desires, kind of shut down. Can't have what you want. So it's really important that we learn to acknowledge and fuel that fire of desire in our children, and to know that desires are not bad, that they're actually precious and valuable. And the main reason that is, and I've already mentioned it a couple times, is that desire is what fuels our destiny. So desires are congruent with who we are and what we were created to do. And the individual desires that we have often indicate what we were created to do. And so we all come into the world with different, made in different ways, depending on what God created us to do. So parents need to notice and honor those desires, because it's way too easy for parents to brush off things that seem insignificant to them. I had a daughter who loved to take the scraps after dinner and put them in a bowl in the sink, and she'd just make her stew. And, some parents would say that was gross and disgusting, and she was scraping the plates off and mixing it all up, but she was doing it in the sink. Well, now she went to culinary school. And I just let her pursue that. It was a simple little desire to do that. It scratched an itch for her, and she was just developing that desire and that skill that the Lord put in her, that was tied to her purpose and her destiny. A famous example is the Wright brothers. They love to take apart motors and things and see how they worked, and small appliances. And without their mom's knowledge, they would go on trash day. They'd go through the neighborhood and dig through the neighbor's trash, looking for, discarded items that they could take apart and learn how they worked. But what were they doing? They were developing that desire to know how things work so they could create the first airplane. So I'm running out of time really quickly, but it's key to successful parenting to learn to honor your child's desires so that they can fulfill their purpose and reach their potential. So next week, we're going to learn the key to your child's heart. It's going to dovetail right off of what we talked about today. And so I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching. Until next week, take care and God bless.